The guard's voice cut through the steel door like a blade. "You are worth nothing to me, ruined," her captor said, and Kira Owens pressed her back against the cold concrete wall, trying to make herself smaller in the windowless room that had become her entire world for the past 3 weeks. She could hear him pacing outside, his boots heavy on the floor above. "The buyer wants you intact, clean, unmarked. You'll stay that way until I get my money, or I'll dump you in the river and find another girl who knows how to follow instructions." Kira wrapped her arms around her knees and tried to remember what sunlight felt like. The room smelled of mildew and old stone, and the single bulb overhead flickered constantly, throwing shadows that danced across the walls like mockery. She had stopped crying after the first week. Tears were a waste of water, and they only gave him satisfaction when he checked on her twice a day with protein bars and bottled water, treating her like livestock waiting for auction. She had been walking home from her shift at the coffee shop when the van pulled up beside her. 2 men, human she thought, had grabbed her before she could scream. They'd drugged her, and when she woke, she was here. Underground, she guessed, from the way sound carried. The man who called himself Marcus had explained it simply. She was merchandise now. Young, healthy, the right blood type. There were buyers who paid premium prices for what he called clean inventory. Kira had tried to keep track of the days by scratching marks into the concrete with a pebble she'd found in the corner, but she'd lost count somewhere around 20. Time blurred when there were no windows, no natural light, nothing but the endless fluorescent buzz in Marcus's footsteps overhead. She was dozing when the wall began to change. At first, Kira thought the flickering bulb was playing tricks on her exhausted mind. The concrete seemed to shimmer, like heat waves rising from summer asphalt. Then, the shimmer became movement. The wall itself was parting, stone and dust folding away like a curtain drawn by invisible hands, revealing not the corridor she expected, but a figure stepping through solid rock as though it were nothing more than morning fog. Kira scrambled backward, her heart hammering, convinced she'd finally lost her mind. The man who walked through the wall was unlike anyone she had ever seen. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with pale skin that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. His hair fell past his shoulders, pure white despite a face that looked no older than 30, and his eyes were the color of old silver. He wore dark clothing that looked expensive, tailored, completely out of place in this underground prison. When he moved, it was with a grace that seemed almost inhuman, each step deliberate and controlled. He looked at her, and Kira felt the weight of that gaze like a physical thing, ancient, powerful, completely focused on her. "You're safe now," he said. His voice was quiet, barely above a whisper, but it filled the room. "My name is Gerik Thorne. I'm here to take you from this place." Kira couldn't speak. Her throat had closed with fear or shock, or perhaps desperate hope. She watched as he moved closer, his silver eyes taking in the protein bar wrappers scattered in the corner, the water bottles, the crude scratches she'd made on the wall to counter captivity. "How many?" he asked, gesturing to the marks. "I lost count," Kira managed, her voice cracking from disuse. She cleared her throat. "Around 20, maybe more. How did you walk through the wall?" "I am very old," Gerik said simply, as though that explained everything. "And I have been hunting the man who took you for longer than you have been alive." He moved to the steel door, pressing his pale hand against it. Kira heard the lock mechanism groan and then snap. The door swung open. "Can you walk?" Kira pushed herself to her feet. Her legs were weak from weeks of inactivity, but adrenaline was singing through her veins now. "Who are you?" "Someone who does not traffic in human lives," Gerik said. He stepped into the corridor, moving with that same unhurried grace. "Stay behind me." She followed because what else could she do? The corridor was narrow and dimly lit, exactly as she'd imagined. She could hear voices from somewhere above, Marcus's among them. Gerik moved toward the sound rather than away from it, and Kira's heart began to race again. "Shouldn't we be running?" she whispered. "No," Gerik said. "He will not touch you again." They climbed a set of concrete stairs, and Kira realized they had been in some kind of basement, deep underground. The voices grew louder. She heard Marcus laughing about something, and rage suddenly cut through her fear. 3 weeks. 3 weeks of terror and isolation, of being treated like a thing rather than a person. Gerik pushed open a door at the top of the stairs, and they emerged into what looked like an abandoned warehouse. Marcus stood near a makeshift desk with 2 other men, all of them human from what Kira could tell. They were looking at a laptop discussing numbers, prices. Marcus looked up as the door opened. His expression went from surprise to fury in an instant. "How the hell did you get out?" He started toward Kira, but Gerik stepped between them, and something in the way he moved made Marcus freeze mid-stride. "You will not come closer," Gerik said. His voice was still quiet, but there was an edge to it now, something that raised the hair on the back of Kira's neck. Marcus stared at Gerik, his face paling. "What are you?" "A king," Gerik said simply, "and you have violated laws older than your civilization." One of the other men pulled a gun, but Gerik moved faster than Kira's eyes could track. One moment he was standing still, the next he was beside the gunman, the weapon clattering to the floor. The man cried out and stumbled back, clutching his wrist. "You traffic in human blood," Gerik said, his silver eyes fixed on Marcus. "You sell them to my kind and yours. You profit from suffering." Marcus tried to run. Gerik caught him by the throat, lifting him off his feet with one hand, and Kira saw something that made her breath catch. Gerik's eyes had changed, the silver darkening to something that looked like molten metal, and when he opened his mouth slightly, she saw the glint of fangs. Vampire. The word crashed through her mind with the weight of revelation and terror. Gerik was a vampire king, he'd said. She should run, should scream, should do something other than stand frozen in the doorway, watching him hold her captor like he weighed nothing. "Where are the others?" Gerik asked, his voice still preternaturally calm. "How many more have you sold?" Marcus choked out something incomprehensible. Gerik set him down but didn't release his grip. "Speak clearly." "I'm just a middleman," Marcus gasped. "I find them, hold them, pass them on. I don't know what happens after." "Who do you pass them to?" "I can't tell you that. They'll kill me." "I will kill you," Gerik said, and Kira believed him absolutely. "Choose quickly." Marcus gave up names, locations, details that poured out in a desperate rush. Gerik listened without interruption, his expression never changing. When Marcus finally fell silent, Gerik looked at the other two men, who had been slowly edging toward the exit. "You will take me to the locations he described," Gerik said. "Now." They ran instead. Gerik let them go. He turned to Kira, his eyes fading back to silver, and she saw something in his face that surprised her. Concern. "You should not have seen that," he said quietly. "You're a vampire," Kira said. Her voice was steadier than she felt. "Are you going to hurt me?" "No." The answer was immediate, absolute. "I'm taking you to safety. Then I'm going to dismantle the organization that took you." He looked at Marcus, still trembling in his grip. "This one will be dealt with by human authorities. They will believe he acted alone for now. The others require a different approach." Kira found her voice. "How did you find me?" "I've been tracking this blood trade for months," Gerik said. "Your captor was careless. He left traces." He released Marcus, who collapsed to the floor, and pulled out a phone that looked incongruous in his pale hand. He made a call, speaking briefly in a language Kira didn't recognize, then switched to English. "Yes, the warehouse on 8th, one for collection." He ended the call and looked at Kira. "Human police will arrive soon. You were held here by this man. You escaped when you found the door unlocked. You saw no one else. That is the story you will tell them." "What about you?" "I was never here," Gerik said. He moved toward her, and Kira fought the urge to step back. "I'm going to take you somewhere safe while the authorities process your case. You will not be alone. I have resources, people who can help you recover." "Why?" Kira asked. "Why do you care?" Gerik was silent for a long moment. "Because what was done to you violates every law my kind holds sacred," he finally said. "Because you deserve better than to be treated as merchandise. Because I can help, and therefore, I must." Kira heard sirens in the distance. Gerik heard them too, his head tilting slightly. "They are close. Come with me or stay and tell your story now. The choice is yours." Kira looked at Marcus crumpled on the floor and felt nothing but contempt. She looked at Gerik, this impossible being who had walked through a wall to rescue her, and felt something she couldn't quite name. Trust, maybe, or just desperate hope. "I'll come with you," she said. Gerik nodded. He took her hand, his skin cool against hers, and led her to a door at the back of the warehouse. Outside, the night air was shockingly cold after weeks underground. Kira breathed it in like salvation. The sky was full of stars, and she could have wept at the sight. A car waited in the alley, black and sleek. Gerik opened the passenger door for her, and Kira slid inside, her legs still weak. He moved around to the driver's side with that inhuman grace, and moments later they were pulling away, leaving the warehouse and Marcus and her 3-week nightmare behind. They drove in silence through the city. Kira watched the lights slide past, trying to orient herself. They were still in the same city where she'd been taken, she realized. She'd been underground all that time, probably not more than a few miles from her apartment. "Where are we going?" she asked finally. "Somewhere you can rest," Gerik said. "Somewhere safe." "Your home?" "One of them." Kira studied his profile in the dashboard light. He looked human, except for the coloring, the preternatural stillness. "How old are you?" "Old enough to have seen empires rise and fall," Gerik said. "Old enough to know that what you experienced should never happen to anyone. You called yourself a king. I am, of my kind, in this region. It is my responsibility to enforce our laws, to ensure we do not prey upon humanity in ways that cross certain lines. What Marcus and his organization have done is a violation of accords that have stood for centuries." Kira absorbed this. "So there are rules between vampires and humans." "There are. They are not perfect, and not all of my kind follow them, but they exist. Blood trafficking, slavery, the treatment of humans as mere inventory, these things are forbidden. Those who engage in them face consequences." "What kind of consequences?" Gerik's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "Permanent ones." They drove into an older part of the city, where the buildings were made of stone and the streets were narrow. Gerik pulled into an underground garage beneath what looked like a Gothic cathedral that had been converted into luxury apartments. He parked and came around to open Kira's door, offering his hand. She took it and let him help her out. Her legs were steadier now, but exhaustion was beginning to crash over her in waves. Gerik seemed to sense it. He led her to an elevator, using a key card to access it, and they rode up in silence. The apartment was on the top floor, and it was nothing like Kira expected. Instead of dark and Gothic, it was filled with light from tall windows, furnished in clean modern lines with touches of old-world elegance. Books lined one wall, thousands of them in multiple languages. Art hung on the walls, pieces that looked genuinely old. "You live here?" Kira asked. "Sometimes," Gerik said. "I have several residences. This one is most convenient for the work I've been doing." He gestured toward a hallway. "There's a bedroom prepared. You should rest." "Prepared? You knew you were bringing me here?" "I hoped I would find you," Gerik said quietly. "I've been searching for 3 weeks." The same amount of time she'd been missing. Kira felt something tighten in her chest. "You were looking for me specifically." "For you and others like you. Marcus's operation is part of a larger network. You are not the first he has taken, only the most recent I was able to track." "Were there others? Other people you saved?" Gerik's expression darkened. "Some, not all. I was not always in time." Kira heard the weight in those words, the regret. She wanted to ask more, but exhaustion was making her thoughts fuzzy. Gerik seemed to notice. "Rest," he said again. "We will talk more tomorrow. You are safe here, I promise you that." The bedroom was beautiful, decorated in soft grays and blues, with a bed that looked impossibly comfortable. Kira stood in the doorway, suddenly uncertain. "Will you stay?" "In the apartment, I mean." "I will be in the next room," Gerik said. "If you need anything, call for me. I will hear you." Kira nodded. She went into the bedroom and closed the door, then stood for a long moment just breathing. She was out. She was safe. A vampire king had walked through a wall and rescued her, and now she was standing in a beautiful apartment instead of a concrete cell. She found clothes in the dresser, soft things in her size that made her wonder again how much Gerik had prepared for her rescue. She showered for the first time in 3 weeks, washing away the grime and the fear, standing under the hot water until it ran cold. When she finally climbed into bed, she expected to lie awake, but sleep took her almost instantly. She woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee. For a moment, she thought she'd dreamed everything, but then she saw the clothes she'd worn last night, the ones from Gerik's dresser, and knew it had been real. Kira found him in the kitchen, standing by the window with a cup of something that definitely wasn't coffee. He turned when she entered, and she saw that he looked exactly the same as the night before. Ageless, beautiful in a way that was almost frightening. "Good morning," he said. "There is food, coffee. Help yourself." Kira poured coffee and found pastries in a box on the counter, fresh from some bakery she didn't recognize. She ate while Gerik watched, his silver eyes unreadable. "What happens now?" Kira asked finally. "That depends on you," Gerik said. "I can take you to the police today. You can give a statement about your abduction, identify Marcus. He will face human justice for what he did. But not the others, not the organization." "They are more complicated," Gerik said. "The network Marcus works for spans both worlds, human and vampire. There are members of my kind involved, powerful ones who have been operating in shadow for decades. Taking them down requires a more delicate approach." "You're going after them." "I am." Kira set down her coffee cup. "I want to help." Gerik shook his head. "That's not necessary. You have already survived enough." "I wasn't asking permission," Kira said, and was surprised by the steel in her own voice. "I was telling you, whatever you're planning, I want to be part of it. Those people, that organization, they need to be stopped. How many others are out there right now, locked up like I was, waiting to be sold?" "Too many," Gerik admitted. "But you are not trained for this. You are not prepared." "Then prepare me," Kira said. "Teach me. I'm not going back to my normal life and pretending this didn't happen. I can't." Gerik studied her for a long moment. "You're certain?" "Yes." He nodded slowly. "Then we have work to do." Over the following days, Kira learned more about the world she'd stumbled into than she'd ever imagined existed. Gerik explained vampire society to her, the hierarchies and laws, the eternal politics between the old bloodlines. He told her about the Council of Elders, the governing body that enforced the ancient accords between vampires and humans. He showed her evidence he'd gathered over months of investigation, photographs, documents, recordings that detailed a blood trafficking network stretching across multiple countries. The organization was called the Crimson Syndicate, though that was only a name Gerik had given it. They dealt in human trafficking specifically for vampire consumption, but they also sold to humans who wanted to play with the supernatural, rich collectors who paid premium prices for exotic merchandise. It made Kira sick. It also made her angry, and anger was better than fear. Gerik taught her how to defend herself, simple moves that could buy her time if she needed it. He showed her how to recognize vampires by subtle signs, the way they moved, the way their eyes changed when they were hungry or angry. He was patient, never pushing her, always giving her space to process. And slowly, without quite meaning to, Kira found herself watching him more than the lessons required. Gerik was different from anyone she'd ever known. He was quiet, rarely speaking unless he had something important to say. But when he did speak, she hung on every word. He moved through the apartment like a ghost, appearing and disappearing silently. But he never startled her. He was always careful, always conscious of her space and comfort. He didn't sleep, she learned. Vampires didn't need sleep the way humans did. Instead, he spent the nights reading or working, gathering more information about the syndicate. Sometimes Kira would wake at 3 a.m. and find him sitting by the window, watching the city lights, and something about the loneliness in that image made her heart ache. One night, she couldn't sleep. She found him in his usual spot by the window, a book open in his lap. "What are you reading?" she asked. He showed her the cover. It was poetry, ancient Greek from what she could tell. "Can you read that?" "I can read many languages," Gerik said. "You accumulate skills over centuries." Kira sat down across from him. "What was it like when you were human?" Gerik closed the book slowly. "I do not remember being human. I was turned over 2,000 years ago, and mortal memories fade with time." 2,000 years, Kira breathed. "That's impossible to imagine." "It is a very long time to be alone," Gerik said quietly. The vulnerability in that admission surprised her. Kira leaned forward. "Are you alone? You must have family, other vampires." "I have subjects. I have allies. I have very few friends." He met her eyes. "Immortality is a gift and a curse. Everyone you care for either dies or changes beyond recognition. You learn to keep your distance." "That sounds awful." "It is what it is," Gerik said. "I chose this path long ago. I do not regret it, but I do not pretend it is easy." Kira wanted to reach for his hand, but stopped herself. Why did you really save me? The truth. Gerik was quiet for a long time. Because I have failed to save others, he said finally. Because every person the syndicate takes is a stain on my conscience. I am supposed to protect both my people and yours from those who would abuse the power we hold. I have been trying to stop the syndicate for years, but they are well connected, careful. You were the first lead I found that I could act on in time. So I was just convenient? No. The word was sharp. Word almost fierce. Gerik's silver eyes met hers. You were never just anything. You are a person who deserved to be saved, who deserves justice. I do not measure lives by convenience. The intensity in his gaze made Kira's breath catch. She looked away first, her heart racing. Thank you, she said quietly, for everything, for coming for me, for giving me a place to stay, for teaching me. I haven't said that enough. You do not need to thank me, Gerik said. You owe me nothing. But she felt like she did, like she owed him everything. She went back to bed that night thinking about his loneliness, about 2,000 years of keeping his distance, and she realized with a start that she wanted to close that distance. That somewhere in the past week, she'd started to care about him in a way that went beyond gratitude. The realization terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. The next day, Gerik told her it was time to move forward with the plan. I have enough evidence to present to the Council of Elders, he said. They were sitting in his study surrounded by documents and photographs. The syndicate has been operating in violation of the Accords for decades. If I can prove that to the Council, they will authorize action. What kind of action? Immediate dismantling of the organization. Arrest of all vampire members. Liberation of any humans being held. The Council takes violations of this magnitude very seriously. And the human members? They will be turned over to human authorities with enough evidence to ensure convictions. The syndicate will be destroyed from both sides. Kira studied the documents. What do you need from me? Your testimony, Gerik said. A first-hand account of your abduction and captivity. The Council will want to hear from a victim. The thought of standing before a council of ancient vampires and describing what had been done to her made Kira's stomach turn, but she nodded. When? Tomorrow night. I have called for an emergency session. They will hear us. That night, Kira couldn't sleep again. She lay in bed thinking about what tomorrow would bring, about facing the council, about finally seeing justice done. She thought about what would happen after. Would Gerik still need her here? Would she go back to her old life, her coffee shop job and tiny apartment, and pretend none of this had happened? The thought of leaving him made her chest ache. She got up and went looking for him, found him in the study still working. He looked up when she entered, and something in his expression softened. You should be resting, he said. I can't sleep. Kira sat down across from him. I keep thinking about tomorrow. What if they don't believe me? What if it's not enough? It will be enough, Gerik said. I have been building this case for months. Your testimony is the final piece, but it is not the only piece. The Council will see the truth. And after? What happens after? Gerik set down his pen. After, you will be free to return to your life. I will ensure the syndicate cannot touch you. You will be safe. What if I don't want to return to my old life? The question hung between them. Gerik's silver eyes searched her face. What do you want? Kira took a breath. I want to keep doing this, helping people the syndicate has hurt, making sure no one else goes through what I went through. I want to work with you. That is not a life I can ask you to live, Gerik said quietly. It is dangerous. It is dark. You deserve better. You don't get to decide what I deserve, Kira said. I do, and I'm telling you what I want. Why? The simple question cut through everything. Kira met his eyes and decided to be honest. Because I've spent the past 2 weeks watching you fight for people you've never met. Because you're kind and patient and lonely, and I think maybe I'm falling in love with you. The silence that followed was absolute. Gerik stared at her like she'd spoken in a language he didn't understand. Then, slowly, he shook his head. You cannot love me, he said. I am not human. I'm not even alive, not in the way you are. What you feel is gratitude, trauma bonding. It will pass. Don't tell me what I feel, Kira said, anger flaring. I know the difference between gratitude and love. I know what I feel when I look at you. You've known me for 2 weeks. And you saved my life. You gave me a reason to keep fighting when I thought I had none. You treat me like a person, not a victim. How long does it take to fall in love? There's no rule book. Gerik stood, pacing to the window. His shoulders were tense, and Kira could see the struggle playing out in his posture. Even if what you feel is real, it changes nothing. I am immortal. You are not. Any relationship between us is doomed from the start. So that's it? You feel something too, but you're going to pretend you don't because I'm human? He turned to look at her, and Kira saw the answer in his eyes before he spoke. I've been trying very hard not to feel anything for you, he said quietly. I've been reminding myself constantly that you are under my protection, that you are vulnerable, that anything between us would be taking advantage. But yes, I feel something. I have from the moment I saw you in that cell, so brave despite everything. Kira's heart was pounding. Then why are we fighting this? Because I am a king, Gerik said. Because I have enemies who would use you against me. Because I am ancient and cold and deadly, and you deserve someone who can give you sunlight and warmth and a normal life. I don't want normal, Kira said. Not anymore. I want you. Gerik closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they had darkened to that molten silver. If we do this, if we allow this to happen, there is no going back. My world is dangerous, Kira. The Syndicate is only one threat among many. There are others who would see you dead simply for being close to me. I'm not afraid. You should be. Then protect me, Kira said. Isn't that what you do? Protect people? Yes. But I have never wanted to protect anyone the way I want to protect you. The admission seemed dragged from somewhere deep inside him. I've never felt this way about anyone, not in 2,000 years. It terrifies me. Kira crossed the room to stand in front of him. She reached up and touched his face, feeling the coolness of his skin, the sharp line of his jaw. We'll figure it out, she said, together. But please don't push me away because you think you know what's best for me. Gerik's hand came up to cover hers. His touch was gentle, reverent. I do not deserve you. Let me decide that. He leaned down, pressing his forehead to hers, and Kira felt the last of his resistance crumble. Very well, he whispered, but know this. If you choose me, I will never let you go. I will protect you with everything I am. You will be mine and I will be yours for as long as you want me. Forever then, Kira said. I want you forever. Gerik kissed her, and it was nothing like she expected. His lips were cool but not cold, gentle but not hesitant. He kissed her like she was something precious, something worth savoring, and Kira melted into him. When they finally pulled apart, she was breathless and he was looking at her like she'd hung the stars. Tomorrow, he said. We face the council tomorrow. After that, we dismantle the syndicate together, and then we build something better from the ruins. Kira nodded, her hand still pressed to his cheek. Together. The Council of Elders met in a chamber deep beneath the city, in tunnels Gerik explained were older than modern civilization. He led Kira through passages carved from stone, lit by torches that burned with an eerie blue flame. She tried not to think about how far underground they were, how the weight of the earth pressed down above them. The chamber itself was massive, circular, with a domed ceiling painted with constellations Kira didn't recognize. 7 thrones were arranged in a semicircle, each occupied by a vampire so ancient that Kira could feel their power like static electricity on her skin. They were all pale, all white-haired, all terrifyingly beautiful. Gerik bowed slightly as they entered, a gesture of respect if not submission. Kira tried to copy him, her heart racing. King Gerik, one of the elders said, her voice like wind through dead trees. You have called this emergency session. Speak. Gerik laid out the case with the same quiet precision he did everything. He presented evidence, documents, recordings, testimonies from other victims he'd managed to track down. He explained the scope of the syndicate, the decades they'd operated, the hundreds of lives they'd destroyed. He spoke for nearly an hour, and the council listened in absolute silence. When he finished, the elder who had spoken first turned her gaze to Kira. You are the most recent victim? Yes, Kira said, fighting to keep her voice steady. Tell us what was done to you. Kira did. She described the abduction, the cell, Marcus's contempt. She described the fear, the isolation, the way she'd been treated as merchandise. Her voice shook but didn't break. Gerik stood beside her, a silent presence, and she drew strength from him. When she finished, another elder spoke. You understand the gravity of these accusations? You accuse members of our kind of violating the accords. I accuse them of trafficking human beings, Kira said, of treating people like inventory. I accuse them of crimes that should disgust any thinking being, vampire or human. The elder's lips twitched, almost a smile. You have courage. King Gerik chose his witness well. The council deliberated, but not for long. The evidence was overwhelming, Gerik's case airtight. Within an hour, they had authorized action. Warrants were issued for the arrest of 17 vampires connected to the syndicate. Orders were given to liberate any humans being held and to seize all syndicate assets. King Gerik, the lead elder said, you will oversee this operation. You have our full authority to do what must be done. Gerik bowed again. Thank you, elder. They left the chamber together, climbing back up through the ancient tunnels. When they finally emerged into the night air, Kira felt like she could breathe again. They believed us, she said. They had no choice, Gerik said. The evidence was irrefutable. Now comes the harder part. The operation took 3 days to execute. Gerik coordinated with other vampire kings and queens across the region, calling in favors, mobilizing forces. Kira watched him work with growing admiration. He was commanding, strategic, every inch the king he claimed to be. She insisted on being part of the raids. Gerik argued, but she was immovable. I need to see this through, she said. I need to know it's really over. He relented, though he kept her close and guarded at all times. The first raid was on a facility similar to the one where Kira had been held. They found 12 people locked in cells, all young, all terrified. Kira helped lead them out while Gerik's people secured the vampire operatives. Seeing those faces, seeing the relief and disbelief when they realized they were being rescued, made everything worth it. The second raid uncovered documents that led to 3 more locations. The syndicate was larger than even Gerik had suspected, but they were unraveling it thread by thread. On the third day, they found the central headquarters, a mansion hidden in the hills outside the city. This was where the leadership operated from, where the money was managed, where the decisions were made. Gerik went in with a team of enforcers, and Kira waited outside, pacing anxiously. The fight was brief but brutal. Kira heard sounds from inside the mansion, crashes and screams, but it was over in minutes. When Gerik emerged, there was blood on his clothes, but his expression was calm. It is done, he said. The leadership is in custody. The syndicate is finished. Kira felt tears prick her eyes. How many people did we save? 37 were being held in various facilities. All have been freed. Human authorities have been notified. Counseling and support will be provided. 37 lives. 37 people who would go home instead of being sold. Kira couldn't speak for a moment, overwhelmed. Gerik touched her shoulder gently. You did this. Your testimony, your courage. It made this possible. We did this, Kira corrected, together. In the aftermath, Gerik and Kira worked to establish something permanent. They used the seized syndicate assets to create a foundation, a haven for victims of trafficking, both human and supernatural. They bought a building in the city and converted it into a shelter, a safe space where people could recover and rebuild. Kira threw herself into the work. She met with survivors, helped coordinate counseling services, worked with human authorities to ensure prosecutions moved forward. It was exhausting and heartbreaking and the most meaningful thing she'd ever done. Gerik was with her every step of the way. He provided resources, connections, protection. He sat with victims and listened to their stories with the same quiet patience he'd shown Kira. He was gentle with them, never pushing, always respectful. Watching him, Kira fell more in love every day. 3 months after the syndicate fell, they stood together in the main hall of the haven they'd built. The space was full of people, survivors and volunteers and advocates, all working together. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, warm and bright. This is what we built from the ruin, Gerik said quietly. This is hope. Kira leaned against him and his arm came around her waist, solid and sure. What happens now? She asked. We keep building, Gerik said. We help more people. We ensure the syndicate never rises again. And us? He looked down at her, silver eyes soft. I want you with me, for as long as you will have me. Kira had been thinking about this for weeks, weighing the decision. She knew what she wanted. I want to be turned, she said. I want to be with you forever, not just for a human lifetime. Gerik went very still. You understand what that means? What you would be giving up? I understand. I'm giving up a normal human life I never wanted anyway. I'm choosing strength, longevity, the ability to keep protecting people. I'm choosing you. The transformation is painful, Gerik warned. Dangerous. Not everyone survives it. I trust you to make sure I do. He cupped her face in his hands, searching her eyes. You are certain? Completely. Then I will give you this gift, Gerik said. But not today. Not until you have had more time to be sure, to understand fully what you are choosing. How much time? A year. If you still want this in a year, I will turn you myself. Kira wanted to argue, but she saw the wisdom in it. All right, a year. The year passed in a blur of work and growth and deepening love. Kira learned more about the vampire world, met others of Gerik's kind, immersed herself in the culture she would be joining. She worked at the Haven every day, helping dozens of survivors find their way back to safety. And she fell more in love with Gerik Thorne with every passing day. He was everything she'd never known she needed. Strong but gentle, powerful but patient, ancient but still capable of wonder. He made her laugh with dry observations about modern technology. He held her when nightmares woke her in the middle of the night. He supported every dream and ambition she had. He never pressured her about the turning. As the year anniversary approached, he asked her again if she was certain. I've never been more certain of anything, Kira said. They chose the night carefully. Gerik explained the process. His venom would stop her heart, then restart it changed. Her body would die and be reborn. It would take 3 days, and she would be in agony for all of them. I will be with you, he promised. Every moment. You will not be alone. Kira trusted him absolutely. The transformation was every bit as terrible as he'd warned. The venom felt like fire in her veins, burning away everything human. Kira screamed until her voice gave out, writhed in pain that had no end. But Gerik was there, holding her hand, speaking softly in languages she didn't know, anchoring her to reality. On the 3rd day, she woke different. Everything was sharper, clearer. She could hear heartbeats from blocks away, could smell individual scents on the wind. Her body felt powerful, thrumming with energy. And when she looked in the mirror, she saw pale skin, white hair beginning to grow in, eyes that had shifted to silver. Gerik stood behind her, watching her reaction. How do you feel? Strong, Kira said, like I could take on the world. You look beautiful, he said softly. You were always beautiful, but now you shine. She turned to face him, and the love she saw in his eyes took her breath away. Thank you, she said, for giving me this, for giving me forever with you. Thank you, Gerik said, for choosing me, for seeing past what I am to who I am. They had eternity now, together. They spent it building on what they'd started, expanding the Haven into a network that spanned countries. They saved hundreds of lives over the years, dismantled smaller trafficking operations, worked tirelessly to protect the vulnerable. But they also found joy. They traveled together, exploring the world Gerik had known for millennia through Kira's new eyes. They learned each other completely, body and soul. They built a home together, a real home full of warmth despite their cold nature. 5 years after Kira's turning, they stood together on the balcony of their apartment, watching the sunrise. Kira could stand in sunlight now, though it was uncomfortable. She did it anyway, for the beauty of it, for the reminder of what she'd once been. Gerik stood beside her, their hands linked. Do you ever regret it? He asked. Choosing this life? Kira looked at him, at the love of her immortal life, and smiled. Never. Not for a single moment. Good, Gerik said, because you are everything to me. My partner, my queen, my heart. I would be lost without you. Then it's good you'll never have to be without me, Kira said. She pulled him close, kissed him in the golden morning light, and felt the absolute rightness of it all. They had been forged in darkness and trauma, but they had chosen to build something light and hopeful from the ruins. They had chosen each other, and they would keep choosing each other for all the centuries to come. The haven continued to grow. 10 years after its founding, they opened a second location, then a third. They trained others, both human and vampire, to continue the work. The organization became larger than either of them, a living legacy of their commitment to justice. Kira discovered she had a gift for leadership. She ran the Haven network with compassion and steel, never forgetting what it felt like to be powerless, always working to empower others. Survivors came to trust her absolutely, seeing in her someone who had walked the same dark road and emerged stronger. Gerik was her constant support, her partner in everything. He handled the political side, maintaining relationships with the Vampire Council, ensuring they had the backing to continue their work. He was proud of what Kira had become, and he told her so often. They didn't have children, not in the traditional sense. Vampires couldn't reproduce that way. But the Haven was filled with young lives they'd saved, people who called them family, who looked to them for guidance and protection. It was enough, more than enough. On the 20th anniversary of Kira's rescue from that concrete cell, they held a gala at the Haven. Hundreds of people attended, survivors and supporters and allies. There were speeches and tears and celebration. Kira stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces. 20 years ago, I was locked in a cell and told I was worth nothing, she said. One man saw me as merchandise to be sold. Another saw me as a person worth saving. That choice, the choice to see humanity in the vulnerable, to protect rather than exploit, that is what we celebrate tonight. She looked at Gerik, standing off to the side, his silver eyes fixed on her with absolute devotion. We build this haven on a simple truth. Every life has value. Every person deserves dignity, safety, the chance to recover and rebuild. We have saved over 300 lives in 20 years. We will save 300 more in the next 20 and 300 after that for as long as it takes. The applause was thunderous. Kira stepped down from the podium and went to Gerik, who pulled her into his arms. I am so proud of you, he said against her hair. Of us, of everything we have built. We're not done yet, Kira said. No, Gerik agreed. We have eternity. We will never be done. They danced that night, surrounded by people they'd saved and people who helped them save others. They danced under lights that sparkled like stars, moving together with the perfect synchronization that came from 2 decades of partnership. When the gala ended and the guests departed, they stood alone in the empty hall. Gerik pulled Kira close, resting his chin on top of her head. Do you remember that first night? He asked. When I walked through your wall? I remember thinking I'd finally lost my mind, Kira said with a soft laugh. A man with white hair and silver eyes moving through solid stone. It was impossible. You were so brave, even terrified, even broken, you were brave. I had to be. You showed me it was possible to survive, to fight back. Gerik tilted her face up to his. You showed me it was possible to love again, to hope. For 2,000 years I kept my distance from everyone, convinced that connection only led to pain. Then you came into my life and changed everything. Kira kissed him, soft and sweet. Best decision I ever made, falling in love with a vampire king. Best decision I ever made was walking through that wall, Gerik said. Everything else followed from that moment. They went home that night to their apartment, the same one where Gerik had first brought Kira to safety. They'd remodeled over the years, changed the decor, but the bones of it remained the same. It would always be the place where their story truly began. In bed, Gerik held Kira close, their cool bodies pressed together, and she felt utterly content. This was her life now, fighting for justice, building sanctuaries, loving a man who had saved her and let her save him in return. I love you, she said into the darkness. I love you, Gerik replied, for all eternity. And in that moment, Kira knew with absolute certainty that they would face that eternity together, building light from darkness, hope from despair, love from the ruins of what had once tried to destroy them. The years continued to unfold, decades passing like seasons. The Haven network expanded across the globe, becoming a recognized force for good in both human and vampire societies. Kira and Gerik's relationship became legendary, a story told to inspire others. The king who walked through walls to save a captive, the human who chose to become something more, the love that defied every odd. They faced challenges, of course. There were those who tried to restart operations like the Syndicate, but Kira and Gerik shut them down swiftly and decisively. There were political battles within the Vampire Council, but Gerik's reputation and Kira's fierce advocacy won more often than they lost. Through it all, they remained devoted to each other and to the work they'd started. They never forgot where they came from, never lost sight of why they'd built what they had. Every person they saved was a reminder, a validation, a reason to keep going. 50 years after that first rescue, Kira stood in a new facility, the largest they'd ever opened. It was a sprawling complex that could house and support hundreds, with counseling centers, job training programs, even schools for the children of survivors. Gerik stood beside her, looking exactly as he had that first night, ageless and eternal. Kira looked the same now too, frozen at the age she'd been when she turned. They would look like this for centuries, millennia perhaps. "We did it," she said, gesturing to the facility. "Look at what we built." "Look at what you built," Gerik corrected. "This was your vision. I simply helped make it real." "We're partners," Kira said firmly, "in everything." "Yes," Gerik agreed, "in everything." They cut the ribbon together, officially opening the new facility, and Kira felt a surge of pure joy. This was purpose. This was meaning. This was love made manifest in stone and programs and second chances. That night, back in their private quarters, Gerik presented Kira with a gift. It was a portrait of her, painted the day after her rescue, when she'd still been human and healing. The artist had captured her perfectly, fragile but fierce, broken but not beaten. "I commissioned this years ago," Gerik said. "I wanted to remember where you started, who you were when I first found you. Not because that version of you was better, but because it reminds me of your strength. You survived hell and came out fighting." Kira studied the portrait, seeing her younger self stare back. She barely recognized that girl now. "I was so scared," she said quietly. "You were magnificent," Gerik said. "You still are." Kira turned to him, this man who had given her everything, who had seen her at her lowest and loved her anyway. "Thank you," she said, "for that first rescue, for every day since, for being my partner, my love, my everything." "Thank you," Gerik said, "for choosing me, for giving me purpose beyond duty, for showing me that even an ancient heart can learn to love again." They made love that night with the tenderness of old familiarity and the passion that never seemed to fade. Afterward, lying tangled together, Kira felt absolutely at peace. "Do you think this is what happiness looks like?" she asked. "This life we've built?" "I think happiness looks different for everyone," Gerik said. "But for me, yes. This is happiness. You are happiness." "We should write it all down," Kira said suddenly. "Our story, how we met, what we built, everything, so that others can know it's possible to take the worst moment of your life and turn it into something beautiful." "If you wish to write it, I will help you remember every detail," Gerik promised. They did write it over the next several years. Kira penned their story while Gerik filled in details she'd missed, moments she hadn't seen. They published it not as fiction, but as testimony, as proof that darkness could be overcome, that love could flourish in the most unlikely places. The book became required reading at the Haven facilities. Survivors read it and found hope. Volunteers read it and found inspiration. Even other vampires read it, seeing in Gerik's choices a model for how their kind could interact with humanity more ethically. 100 years after that first rescue, Kira and Gerik stood at the original Haven facility, now a historic site. They were dedicating a memorial to all the lives lost to trafficking, both before their intervention and after, in the fights they'd waged. "We cannot save everyone," Kira said in her speech, "but we can fight for everyone. We can build systems that protect the vulnerable. We can create sanctuaries for those who need them. And we can love fiercely, choosing connection over isolation, hope over despair." After the ceremony, an elderly woman approached them. She had been one of the first people they had rescued from the Syndicate, a girl of 19 at the time. Now she was over 100, with grandchildren and great-grandchildren, a full life lived in freedom. "I wanted to thank you," she said to Kira and Gerik. "You gave me my life back. Everything I've experienced, everyone I've loved, it's all because you fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself." Kira embraced her gently, careful of her aged fragility. "You fought for yourself," she said. "You survived. We just opened the door." "You did more than that," the woman insisted. "You showed me what love looks like. Real love, the kind that asks nothing in return but gives everything. I tried to model my life on that. I hope I succeeded." "You did," Gerik said quietly. "You built a beautiful life. That is the greatest success." After the woman left, Kira turned to Gerik with tears in her silver eyes. "Moments like that," she said, "they make everything worth it." "Yes," Gerik agreed, "they do." They continued their work for centuries, becoming fixtures in both vampire and human societies. They advised kings and presidents, spoke at universities, trained generations of advocates. But they never forgot their roots, never stopped being hands-on at the Haven facilities. Kira still met with every new arrival personally when she could, sharing her own story, offering hope from a place of genuine understanding. Gerik still coordinated raids on trafficking operations, still walked through walls when necessary to save the vulnerable. They were legends by now, the Vampire King and his queen, the couple who had turned personal tragedy into global change. But to each other, they were simply Kira and Gerik, two souls who had found each other in darkness and chosen to build light together. On their 200th anniversary, they returned to the city where it all began. The warehouse where Marcus had held Kira was long gone, replaced by a park with a memorial at its center. They walked through it hand in hand, remembering. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't found you in time?" Gerik asked. "No," Kira said firmly, "because you did find me. You walked through a wall and changed my life forever. Everything else is just alternative history." "I am grateful every day," Gerik said, "that I was hunting the syndicate, that I tracked Marcus to that warehouse, that I arrived when I did. Timing can change everything." "Fate," Kira said, "or luck, or divine intervention, whatever it was, I'm grateful too." They sat on a bench in the park watching the sunset. Vampires didn't age, didn't change. But Kira swore she could feel the weight of centuries in Gerik's presence, the accumulation of all they'd experienced together. "What do you want to do for the next 200 years?" she asked. "Exactly what we've been doing," Gerik said. "Fighting for justice, building sanctuaries, loving you. It is a simple plan, but it has served me well." "Me too," Kira said. She leaned her head on his shoulder, watching the sky turn gold and red and purple. "I used to think I was worth nothing, because that's what Marcus told me. But you taught me differently. You showed me my value, not as merchandise, but as a person, a partner, a force for change." "You always had that value," Gerik said. "I simply helped you see it." "We helped each other," Kira said. "That's what love is, I think. Helping each other see the best in ourselves, supporting each other through the worst. We've done that for 200 years. I want to keep doing it for 200 more, and 200 after that, forever." "Forever," Gerik agreed. "I like the sound of that." They sat together as the sun sank below the horizon and the stars emerged, two immortal beings who had chosen each other against all odds and never regretted it for a moment. Around them, the city lived and breathed, full of people going about their lives, most of them unaware of the vampires in their midst, unaware of the couple who had saved so many and would save so many more. But Kira and Gerik knew. They carried the weight and joy of their purpose, the knowledge that they made a difference, that their love had rippled out into the world and changed it for the better. And as the night deepened and they finally rose to head home, Kira took Gerik's hand and felt that familiar spark of connection, that sense of absolute rightness that had never faded despite the centuries. "I love you," she said. "I love you," Gerik replied, "always and forever." They walked into the night together, ready for whatever the next chapter of their eternal story would bring, confident in their love and their purpose, knowing that together they could face anything and build something beautiful from even the darkest beginnings. The story of their love had started with a wall broken down and a captive freed, had grown through choice and courage and commitment, and would continue for as long as stars shone in the sky above them, a testament to the power of love to transform not just 2 lives, but countless others, rippling out through time in waves of hope and healing and second chances. And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all.